So, we're doing this Advent preaching series called So What? Putting our hope in God's plan for growth. This is the second part of that series, and I want to focus on God's plan. God's plan that we see in the scriptures today. In the book of Isaiah, we get all of these kind of strange images of a wolf and a lamb laying down together, of a bear and a cow in a field eating grass, of a child who looks like they're trying to play patty cake with a snake. I don't recommend it. They don't have hands, but also they'd probably bite you. And you wouldn't really have a wolf laying down with a lamb. So what are all these images trying to say? This is not our experience in the world today. What these images are trying to make us think about is that God is promising a time where there will be perfect peace, where the things that seem unpeaceful naturally in the world will change, and God will reign in all of creation, just like he did in the beginning. And this image of perfect peace, this unity that is God's plan for the whole world, is also his plan for us here as a church. He wants us to live in unity and in peace. That is God's vision. It's his plan. And I'm glad that here at Holy Trinity Parish, part of our vision statement is to transform the world for Jesus. We want to take part in Jesus' mission to bring about peace and unity in the world, all underneath his lordship. But it's going to take some growth to get there. We have hope in God's plan for growth because we're not there yet. We're not at that place of perfect peace yet. And that's why the images for this series show growth, moving from a little pine cone to a young sapling that's growing to finally a fully fledged pine tree that has its own cones that can go out on the same mission that all pine cones go on, which is to grow more pine trees. God wants us to be at a stage where we can go and do what the church does, which is go out and make not more pine trees, but more Christians. Because everyone loves a good membership drive. Not exactly. It's the very peace and unity that Christ wants to have in our hearts that we want to spread. We don't want to just gain members for the church because that's going to make Father Tim feel good and Father Michael feel good because we got a lot of people here. It's going to make us feel joy to know that Jesus is bringing peace into the hearts of so many people. And so if we want to get to here, if we want to get to this place where we're going out and bringing peace beyond our parish to all sorts of other people, we have to think about what God wants us to do in terms of growth now. And so I want to share a little bit about myself learning about growing by taking you to one of my favorite provinces in Canada, Saskatchewan. And Saskatchewan is home to some really lovely people, great, lovely people like Father Eve and our seminarian George come from Saskatchewan. And so does my friend Joshua. This photo is me about 10 years ago. And I got to go to his family farm out in Saskatchewan and learn about growing one of the favorite legumes out there, lentils. The lovely and wonderful lentil. And in this first picture, I know about this much. I know zero about growing lentils. And then Joshua's dad is kind of teaching me about when they harvest them, the different grades that they can be at, different things that can affect their growth. And then eventually I got to a place where I'm actually inside that combine, and I got to go out and harvest some lentils, which was pretty cool. But I had to grow in my understanding to be able to do that. And so There's these 3 stages of growth that I want to invite you to think about today. They're true when we're learning, and they're true about the growth of a plant, and they're true about the life of a parish. That there's going to be a foundational stage, a stage where you're just planting the seed, planting the lentil plant or the pine cone, where I don't really know much yet. I'm just starting out. A place where the church is coming together to form a unity with each other. We're gathering together. We're setting a vision together. We're establishing an evangelization program. These are things that we've actually done as a parish. Before I got here, there were some great foundations that have been laid. We have a vision. We have a mission. We run Alpha here. We just finished it up this week. This is excellent foundational stuff we've done. But then after that, there's some growth that needs to happen. There's more growth that needs to happen. The plant needs to grow. I need to grow in my learning of how to be a lentil farmer. The church needs to grow in its capacity. And so we are and we have been building a discipleship pathway here so that people can come to Christ here in this church and grow in being Christians. They can learn how to serve, how to encounter him, how to bring him out to others. We're learning together as a church, and this is part of this growth phase. And there's always growing pains in a growth phase. There's things you have to take on, and there's things you have to let go of to grow. It can be a challenging phase, but it's the phase that we're in. And then the phase that we all want to get to is this place where the lentils are ready to do the thing that lentils do. They're ready to drop to the ground and make more lentil plants. They're ready to go on that same mission. I was ready to go harvest some lentils. The church here will be so overflowing with people filling up all of our ministries that we'll actually need to go and help other churches because we'll have too many volunteers, too many servants doing the work here. That's a vision that we have as a church, to go out with the good gifts that God is growing here. And so this image here just shows these different stages that churches go through. And even though we started off by giving the example of a pine cone, that's not really totally accurate for our situation here as Holy Trinity Parish. A more proper image might be the one that we get in the book of Isaiah, this stump of Jesse. Let me explain the stump of Jesse a little bit. So Jesse was the father of King David. And King David was king of all of Israel. There was a great unity and a peacefulness, a harmony amongst the people when they had one king under God together. But then, that unity was disrupted. After King David, other sons came up who divided the kingdom. And how sad do you think God was when his people weren't all together, not living in peace with each other, not living in unity, not having the same vision together? Because the opposite of the vision of peace that God wants is division. Two visions, multiple visions. We're going in different directions. We're not all following where God is giving the growth. And so the reason this image is good for us as Holy Trinity is because we have a foundation from different churches that came together to make one church. That was hard. There was a cutting off that had to happen. That was painful growth. We went through COVID together, and here we are on the other side of it. That was tough. We have this great foundation, like this big stump, and there is growth that God is giving us through it. The growth that God promises, this sprout from the stump of Jesse, is Jesus, and it's what God is doing today in the church. But if we only want what he did in the past, and we don't want his new growth today, if we only want what he did in the past, we're just a stump. there's nothing green. There's nothing new. There isn't really hope. And so we have to be attentive to the ways that God is calling us to grow today. And John the Baptist rightly gets upset at the Pharisees for this. Because the Pharisees don't want Jesus. They don't want the new growth that God is going to give. They just want the status quo of how things have been. And they think because they have that, they have those old ways, they have Abraham, that's enough. But John the Baptist rightly points out God could take stones and make them into sons of Abraham. Without the new life that God is doing now, you're not alive. And the church is not alive without the new growth that God is giving now. We need his light to shine on us today. And so I want to encourage us all today to try our best to take part in the one vision we want to have here together, so that we can spread peace and unity in our church and elsewhere as well. We want to be open to whatever help God gives us, even if it's different than how things have been in the past. And change can be difficult. I don't like change. I like things to be routine and the same way over and over again. I'd like to introduce you to a concept from improv. I like theater. I like improvisation. It's fun. But there's this concept called no blocking. If you're in an improv scene and someone says, "Oh, look, there's a purple hippopotamus," and you say, "No, there's not," well, you totally kill the scene. It can't move forward. The concept that you'd rather have in improv is yes and. So if the person says, "There's a purple hippopotamus," you could say, "Yes, and there's a pink rhinoceros." And then you keep going with the scene and you go on the safari and it's an awesome adventure. That's taking part in the vision and adding to it. We don't want to subtract from it. And can I be very real with you for a moment? I don't like having this preaching series during Advent. Just totally honest. When I first heard about it, I was not a fan. I didn't like the vision of having a preaching series during Advent and having to coordinate, I'm a new priest, having to coordinate my thoughts on the readings, plus the thoughts of the series, plus what Deacon Art said last week, plus what Father Tim's going to say next week. Can't I just write my homily on my own? But where would be the unified vision in that? Where would be the peace as a leadership of the church in that? It wouldn't be there. And what is God doing in my heart right now? I'm growing. I'm growing in my ability to do homilies with other people, which is something I haven't got to practice before. God wants to do growth inside of us, and sometimes our initial reaction is going to be no. But God is calling us to say yes. Yes, and. And so I invite you to try this as a church together. When there are ideas that we have as a church that might seem new or different, because we want to welcome the beautiful growth God is doing in our area of Lower Sackville, we want to invite the new people in this area into our church, I invite you to go along with the things that have been discerned here as a church, to go along with whatever help God is giving, whatever help Jesus is giving us. We want to go along with it to the best of our abilities. And you can practice now in your families. So, if mom or dad says, "Oh, I would really like to go to this movie," or "I'm really tired and I think we should stay in tonight," maybe, kids, you could listen to mom and dad and not fight it. Maybe if your kid wants to go to the park or something that's happening in the city, you could surrender the fact that as a parent you're tired, and I'm sure you do this so many times already, and say, "Okay, yes, and we will go, but maybe tomorrow, or maybe just for 15 minutes. So practice it in your families and practice it in the church. We want to get good at saying yes and to the hopeful plan that God is giving to us to grow our church.